A harsh winter wind howled through the streets of Chicago, rattling windows as it carried secrets down lonely alleyways. In a small police precinct tucked away from the city's bustling downtown, a single misdeed would spark a scandal that no one saw coming. Power can twist even the simplest gestures into weapons, and for one overzealous officer, the uniform became a symbol of unchecked authority. For a routine traffic stop to a cold jail cell, an unimaginable injustice was about to unfold. Little did anyone know that the victim was married to the one man who could destroy the corrupt officer's entire career. Officer Brian Keller was a name whispered through the halls of the 12th Precinct with a mixture of apprehension and acceptance. To the rookies, he was a figure to watch closely, someone who had enough experience to avoid discipline yet seemed perpetually teetering on the edge of impropriety. To the veterans, he was a nuisance, but they had learned to live alongside his antics. The Chicago Police Department was large, and a single bad apple often stayed hidden among the good. Keller took advantage of the system's cracks. Tall, broad-shouldered, and always wearing a smug grin, Keller carried himself like an untouchable presence. He loved the sense of power that being a cop gave him. It was more than a standard to protect and serve motto. To him, the badge represented personal authority, a lever to manipulate the city's residents however he saw fit. Those who found themselves on his radar, particularly people of color, soon discovered that the scales of justice tipped dramatically in his favor. In private circles, he would loudly complain about certain types moving into neighborhoods he believed they didn't belong in. At the station, he made sure his prejudices never reached the ears of the higher-ups who might take action. Instead, he peppered his remarks with coded language, enough to vent his contempt but vague enough to avoid official reprimand. The tension surrounding him was as thick as Chicago's infamous lakefront fog. Like many cops in the city, Keller enjoyed free coffee from the Starbucks near the precinct. It was an unspoken perk. The baristas recognized the badges, and in return, officers promised a sense of security around the store. For Keller, it was just another opportunity to gloat. He would throw his weight around, expecting baristas to serve him first while ignoring patient customers in line. On particularly stressful days, he'd bark at them to make his drink quicker, threatening that if they messed it up, he'd find a reason to cite them for a violation he'd invent on the spot. Behind the arrogance, however, lurked insecurities he rarely admitted to himself. Keller's father had been a decorated officer in the same department, lauded for fair policing and an unwavering commitment to community relations. The older Keller had built bridges with inner-city neighborhoods, forging alliances that reduced crime rates. Brian, by contrast, felt overshadowed by that legacy. He had neither the patience nor the empathy required to replicate his father's achievements. Resentment brewed inside him. Instead of letting it fuel self-improvement, he allowed it to transform into anger directed at the very communities his father had cared for. "I'm not my father," he often told himself, heart-pounding in frustration when he witnessed a community event in honor of the late Sergeant Keller. Photographs of his father, smiling beside local youth leaders, haunted the station's walls, reminding him of the man's exemplary career. Brian felt that he deserved respect, not by moral standing, but by sheer force. If he couldn't earn people's admiration, he'd settle for their fear. Still, no one had ever dared to formally challenge him. Internal affairs had tiptoed around him once or twice, but each time, Keller managed to slither away with a shrug. After all, policing was a complicated job, and he was adept at manipulating reports so that they read in his favor. Even so, a sense of invincibility had grown within him like a weed, its roots thick and tangled, choking out any remaining empathy. Fate had a strange way of teaching lessons, though. Something was about to happen that would uproot his arrogance in ways he could never have imagined. It was a Friday morning when Ava Williams woke up to the faint sound of a radio broadcaster announcing the weather. The voice crackled that it would be cold and blustery, advising citizens to stay indoors. A typical winter day in Chicago. Ava turned over in bed, glancing at the empty side where her husband, Captain Marcus Williams, would usually be. He had left before sunrise. The new police captain of the 12th Precinct was always busy. She respected his dedication, though sometimes she wished he could take a moment to breathe. Ava's life was not that of a typical spouse of a police captain. She ran her own successful boutique catering company, specializing in mouth-watering southern dishes with a gourmet twist. The aroma of creamy grits, crispy fried chicken, and rosemary-infused waffles often drifted from her test kitchen into the hallway of their modest condo. Despite Marcus's steady role, Ava prided herself on financial independence. She didn't want to be known solely as the captain's wife. She had her own dreams, her own aspirations, and a rich sense of identity that had developed long before she met Marcus. Growing up on the South Side, Ava had faced her share of challenges. Her parents juggled multiple jobs, scrounging up enough money to pay tuition for her to attend a decent private school. She recognized the sacrifices they made and vowed to repay them by making something of herself. Through college scholarships and part-time work, Ava funded her culinary education at the renowned Kendall College in Chicago. There, she honed her skills, discovered her passion for hospitality, and molded herself into the accomplished woman she had always envisioned becoming, while Marcus was tackling departmental reforms, fighting corruption, ensuring that cops were trained in de-escalation techniques, and rebuilding community trust. Ava tackled the test of building her own culinary brand. Their relationship blossomed on a foundation of mutual respect and a shared devotion to serving others. Marcus admired her tenacity. Ava admired his sense of justice. They were, by all appearances, a power couple, though they kept that label in perspective, preferring to stay humble. That Friday, Ava had a busy day. She had a meeting with a new client in downtown Chicago, followed by a trip to Restaurant Depot to pick up supplies for a weekend charity event. She believed in giving back, often volunteering her catering services for local nonprofits. One of her philanthropic events was scheduled for the next day, aimed at providing hot meals and job training for homeless youth. With the same meticulous care she gave to her recipes, she had planned out every detail to ensure its success. After a quick breakfast of oatmeal and a fresh fruit smoothie, she warmed up her car. As she pulled out of the condo's parking structure, snow flurries danced through the air. It wasn't a blizzard, but visibility wasn't great. Ava turned on her headlights, stifled a small yawn, and set off. Life seemed normal, almost comforting in its routine. She had no idea how drastically her day would deviate from a norm. No clue that behind the next wrong turn awaited a hateful gaze, hidden behind the same uniform her husband wore, but in the hands of a far less honorable man. She couldn't predict that her every principle of fairness and justice was about to be tested. As she drove, humming gently to the music on the radio, she had faith that love and decency still prevailed in the world. That faith was soon to be challenged by an ordeal that would rattle even the strongest sense of hope.